Since I finished the AT, people have been asking, are you gonna do another big long thru hike? And I've tried to answer people's individual comments as much as I could, but I feel like I should go ahead and just tell everyone what's up. It may not be the answer a lot of y'all are looking for, but gotta keep it honest, right? The short answer is that I may do the PCT or go southbound on the AT someday, but that will definitely not be anytime soon. And I'm less interested in the CDT, but who knows? Future me may change her mind. Now let's get into the long answer. Hiking the AT and sharing my experience was one of the most exciting, connecting, meaningful, creatively fulfilling experiences that I'll always be proud of. But it was also the physically hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and in the top 5 of mentally hardest things that I've ever done. And I'm a very emotional and dramatic person, so that's really saying something. Because of that, I have very mixed emotions about doing something similar again. Why I'd like to hike again someday is I really like setting a really big goal, seeing progress little by little every day, then finally reaching the end and knowing that step by step you made it. I also really love living outside. I love knowing that most of the water that's fueling my body was filtered from a stream, watching the same sun set that I saw rise that same morning. I love seeing animals. I love getting by with such a small amount of things, a small amount of possessions that I can carry them with me wherever I go. And creatively, there's more eventfulness and emotion in, let's say, one day of thru hiking compared to one day of day hiking or paddleboarding, so that I have the most to work with to make the best video possible. I miss making those kinds of videos, and it's definitely the most watched series I've ever done. I want to give the people what they want, but I also need to be hiking for the right reasons. Now, social media does get a negative reputation, and I understand why. It can seem really self-serving, self-promoting, but I try to see it as self-expression. It's like a puzzle with different pieces you could put in different places, and even there's no exact right answer. It's however you want to tell a true story. So while some people might be listening to this thinking, oh, so you only want to hike because of social media? Well, I don't see that as much different than, let's say, writing a memoir. That said, I still don't think that would be right for that to be the main focus of why I undertake a huge experience, focusing on the end product of what comes from that experience instead of how living every day of it would feel. Those are the reasons that I'd like to thru hike again, but they are outweighed by a lot of other things. Number 1 being money. It's just going to be really hard for me to save up thousands of dollars again. And of course, there's the whole logistics of stepping away from life for a whole 5 or 6 months, like losing your apartment, quitting your job. I'm also in a relationship now, so that is definitely a factor of when I do what. Plus, we have a cat that we don't want to just ditch for months at a time. Being gone for almost half a year would mean missing my family, missing holidays. Being someone that has been out of town for a really long time before, I felt like I'm just the person that everyone catches up with instead of the person you see and you're like, oh, hey, remember what we were talking about last time? Well, I have an update for you, blah, blah, blah. And your whole identity is focused around the hike. Even if you're like, you know what I haven't done in a while? Go to Olive Garden. I really miss the experience of having a pool day. Well, when you're on a thru hike, chances are you're not going to get to do that for a long time. You don't really have hobbies or anything else going on in your life. Everything in your life is about that hike. Doing the AT was a big goal, but once I accomplished that, do I want to keep making hiking goals, or I could make progress on other goals I have, like finding a steady, hopefully somewhat fulfilling of a job, creating a cute and welcoming space that I live in for a long amount of time, and finding a sense of community that lasts years and years instead of like I've done it in the past, I might have gotten a sense of community, but it was only for a few months. Before I did the AT, I lived in a van. Before I lived in a van or was even on YouTube, I worked seasonal jobs and did budget international travel. And if you're picturing like a luxury European vacation, it was more like staying in hostels, working for accommodation. Don't get me wrong, I was so lucky to have that adventure and excitement in my life, but I'm also ready to enjoy consistency and convenience and the simple pleasures of everyday life. Plus, when you're out in the remote wilderness for long stretches of time, that's taking your life in your own hands. You know, there will always be some risk. There was videos of a hiker on the PCT this year that was clinging to the side of a cliff for an hour until search and rescue luckily was able to rescue her. Judging from the comments, the ground just crumpled out beneath her because it had been really dry. You just never know what's going to happen in the backcountry, and you are taking a risk out there. Especially on the PCT, I'm very scared of the Sierra section. I've done the John Muir Trail, which covers a lot of the same ground, and that was incredibly challenging. I couldn't imagine doing it in the snow, with the cold. You know, every step you take, you're sinking down, post-holing as they call it. Snow bridges, which is where there's running water underneath and snow on top, and you could be walking across and it just falls right through and washes you away till who knows when. I hear the water crossings are more challenging, more intense, and I'm just like, that sounds very, very difficult. Another thing I don't think gets talked about as much too is you have so much time to think on a thru hike. I feel like on the AT, I remembered everything I've ever done in my whole life. Look, I have a little guest. Sophie, say you don't want me to go on a thru hike. You don't want me to be gone. I couldn't leave this girl. But you have so much thinking time when you're hiking a long trail. I was like, what if there was a movie where someone was on a hike and like you could see the flashbacks of what they were remembering? She's never been up there before. She knows the camera's on, so she's putting on a show. Anyway, there is a movie like that. It's called Wild. Duh. Because I had all of that thinking time, I got really in my own head, and it seemed like anything that happened, whether it was good or bad, was a matter of life and death, you know? Everything just seemed so much more dramatic. At the same time, that could be because I wasn't really sleeping very well at night, so I was kind of operating with less sleep than I needed. I don't sleep very well when I'm in a new place. And that's another thing, that thru hiking just isn't really good for your body. It is a whole lot of exercise, don't get me wrong, but like I said, I didn't sleep very well. You're not really giving yourself enough time to properly recover, so you're going to be very sore. By the end of the AT, my knees and my feet were screaming at all times. You're also eating a very limited diet, so you're probably not getting a lot of nutrients either. I would feel like I wasn't properly taking care of my body if I was to do another thru hike so soon. And also, I would like better camera gear to better capture my artistic vision for this next adventure. I would also need to do a different posting schedule. On the AT, I posted a short/reel/TikTok every single day and every week, 1 or 2 or 3 if things were really eventful, full-length vlogs. I needed at least 1 day to be in town and edit because I would, do the whole editing process, add voiceovers, add music, upload it, have a thumbnail, deal with storage issues, everything like that. Every 0 day, I didn't really rest my brain. I was sitting there, so I rested my body, but I still never got the time to just sit around and not think about anything. Because of that, I was really, really stressed, and especially towards the end of the trail, I didn't like the person I was becoming just because I never had that rest. I was really stressed out, worried about everything, and I just never want to take that on again. I was doing my best though, and I'm really proud of myself for keeping up with that schedule, with the exception of one out of what was it, 27 or 28 weeks. What I would do is maybe I could do still everyday short / reel / TikToks, and then maybe after the fact, I would have more time to focus all my energy onto making those vlogs. It just would be a while after I did, whereas the shorts would be a week or so after they happened. I don't know if people would be as interested seeing the vlogs outside of the hiking season. I know part of the appeal is like you feel like you're on the trail with people. I don't know if folks would be interested in sort of getting the gist of the experience through my shorts, then seeing a series of vlogs that's the same story but in more detail, then potentially seeing a documentary that's all of that summed up. I don't know. Tell me what you think. What would you like to watch? So far, we've talked about the reasons why I would like to hike again, but how they're outweighed by the reasons that I don't think it's the right time yet. Now let's talk about specific trails and my thoughts towards them. I've already talked a little bit about the PCT when I was talking about the danger of it all. I do really love the vibe of the trail. I absolutely love the West Coast. There's so many beautiful areas it goes through, but I also need to be realistic that what I like is an aesthetic and not the day-to-day experience of dealing with weather extremes, being in the sun a whole lot, climbing over down trees, dealing with fire danger. And I mentioned before that I'm not as interested in the CDT. That's because it's the most remote of the three trails. I really like hiking with other people. I've done so many solo adventures, and at first it was kind of about proving to myself that I could do it. Now I have done solo adventures for a really long time, and after a few weeks it just kind of gets boring and lonely, and I don't enjoy it as much. So what I could do is find a group to go with that also likes to be around other hikers, maybe even do a multi-year through hike where you hike section after section after section to add up to the full length of the trail. Maybe that could be cool. I think the idea of completing the Triple Crown sounds cool, but I think everyone should really want to do all three individual trails, not just Triple Crown to say you Triple Crowned. You know what I mean? It's up to you. Every hiker is different, but I would find wanting to do every trail as a much more meaningful and fulfilling experience. I also mentioned maybe hiking the AT again, but southbound. Because of the mental state I was in towards the end of the trail, I knew I was in beautiful places and I knew I wasn't able to process it completely. I was more focused on, okay, let's get my daily mileage done and not fully soaking in the experience. What if I went the opposite direction and I really got to soak in the beauty of the North? I really love the AT for the ease of getting to town if you want to wait out the weather or just to easily resupply. And I really like the community vibe of it, but being in a smaller bubble of hikers might make that different. I hear southbound ATers have to deal with a black fly season that northbounders don't really experience. And of course, there is always the steep up and downs and the rock climbing of the AT that was really hard the first time. I'm not sure if I'd want to face it again. Again, special appearance by my cat. Of course, there are plenty other trails out there besides the three Triple Crown of thru hiking trails. I'm not really interested in the longer trails because of the same reasons I talked about having to step away from your life for multiple months. As far as shorter trails, I tried the Sheltowee Trace, which goes through Kentucky and Tennessee this spring. I got to about 70 miles of it, 1 week on trail, and it was like every day I was just trying to get through the day. It was an injury that officially got me off trail, but my heart really wasn't in it in the same way. So I'm thinking next trip I do, I would like a little more to look at. No offense to Kentucky, I love my home state, but it was the time of year where the trees were bare and it just wasn't really a lot to inspire you visually. So I'd really like to try the Colorado Trail or the Wonderland Trail, which would take a lot less time. Or maybe I could even do the John Muir Trail again. But what am I doing until then? Well, for the past 2 years, I have been posting at least once a week every Wednesday. at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm going on shorter adventures, day hikes, paddleboarding, shorter backpacking trips. I even went spelunking this summer. And when I'm not doing adventure vlogs, it's information that I hope would help out my fellow adventurer, chatty, sitting down, talking about adventures like this. And I'm trying to still be a part of the AT community, even though I'm not hiking, even though I don't live near the trail. And in a few weeks from now, I have this video coming out where back in March, I met with some hikers starting out on their very first day at Amicalola. I got to sit down and talk to them. And now we'll look back at, okay, how did the rest of their hike turn out? So I'm really excited for that video. If you really just enjoy through hiking vlogs and what I've said in this video is not the answer you were looking for, I am so flattered that you found my AT series enjoyable, and I hope even if it's not what you wanted to hear, you can at least understand the reasoning that I've said in this video. Thank you for listening. Have a good rest of your day.